Jeremy Fink and the Meaning of Life, Chapter 3, The Keys. I send Lizzie a note telling her that Mom doesn't have the keys and that miraculously I'm not being punished. Hours later, as the grandfather clock strikes 11, I finally get a response. I have a plan. Come over at 10 a.m. Bring the letter and the box. Sorry it took so long to get back to you. What with the whole family night is family movie night thing. Field of Dreams again. Again. Don't be late. Lizzie. Lizzie's plans always make me nervous, but in this case, I have nothing to lose. Between dinner time and now, I exhausted my own methods for opening the box. To see if extreme temperatures might loosen the cracks, I put the box in the freezer for an hour. No change. Then I put it in the microwave, but before I hit start, I took it out because what if the meaning of life is actually some tiny alien baby that my father rescued from certain What if... 1 second, I need to reread. Then I put it in the microwave, but before I hit start, I took it out because what if the meaning of life is actually some tiny alien baby that my father rescued from certain persecution? I didn't want to microwave the little guy to death. My final attempt was to wedge a butter knife under the lid, but instead of sliding inside the box, it only hit another layer of wood and wouldn't budge. I do not like surprises. I won't watch scary movies. I won't answer the phone unless I can see who is calling on caller ID. I don't even like it when someone says, "Guess what?" and then waits for you to guess. Surprises make me nervous. Once you have had a real surprise, one that knocks the wind out of you and changes your life, all the little surprises remind you of that big one. This box is a little like that. It is now sitting on the center of my desk, mocking me. Only the size of a shoebox, it somehow overshadows everything else in my room, including the life-size cardboard cutout of the hobbits from The Lord of the Rings. And they're not easy to overshadow. I write Lizzie back and ask for details of her plan, but she doesn't take the note from the wall. After a few minutes, I pull it back out and stick my ear to the hole. The poster covering her end of the hole blocks any light coming through, but I can still hear her cat Zilla purring loudly. Actually, he roars rather than purrs. Zilla, short for Godzilla, since he destroys everything in his path, is fiercely protective of Lizzie and will lunge at anyone who goes near her room. I haven't been more than 1 foot inside her bedroom in 2 years. I think Zilla believes he's a pit bull. I knock a few times on the wall, but not too loudly. Mom taps on the door and brings me a peanut butter sandwich on a napkin. She gives me the box a long look and starts closing the door behind her. Then she stops and says, "Oh wait, I have something for you." A few seconds later, she's back. In all excitement, "I forgot to give you this." She holds out what looks like an ordinary yellow Starburst candy, but I examine it more closely. I realize the bottom half is actually orange. "It's a mutant Starburst! Thanks, Mom!" I jump up from the bed and deposit the Starburst in an airtight Tupperware dish along with the other candy in my collection. It's been a few months since I've added anything new. Airtight or no, the peanut butter M&M is starting to look a little green in spots. It was yellow to begin with. "You've had a big day," Mom says. "Make sure you don't sleep too late." She makes a move like she's going to kiss me on the forehead like she used to when I was little, but then she just tussles my hair and gives the box one more glance before closing the door for good. I have named the hour between 11 and midnight the Hour of Jeremy, HOJ for short. The city is so quiet and peaceful, except for the police and ambulance sirens, the beeping of the car alarms, and the rushing of water in the pipes. But when you grow up in the city, that stuff feels like background noise, and you don't notice it. I feel like I'm the only person alive on the earth. Because of all my HOJ reading, I know a little about a lot. I always win when I play Trivial Pursuit. I would make an excellent Jeopardy contestant. Last night I learned that for everyone alive on Earth today, there are 30 ghosts lined up behind them. Not literally lined up, of course, but that's how many dead people there are compared to living people. In all, around 100 billion people have walked on this planet, which interestingly enough is the same number of stars in our Milky Way galaxy. Science is my favorite class in school. I have a healthy fascination with the Milky Way, and not just because it has some name of a chocolate bar. Usually my HOJ reading is a mix of any of the books on my shelf, along with at least 15 minutes of time travel. But tonight's HOJ will be spent only learning about keys. This is what the internet tells me. 1. The first keys were used 4,000 years ago by the ancient Egyptians to protect their caves. 2. Locks were initially made of interlocking wooden pegs with a wooden key that raised one section of pegs out of the grooves so the lock slid open. 3. The Romans later began making keys and locks out of metal, mostly bronze and iron, and began using springs inside the locks. The keys were called warders, and most had an oval shape at the top and long straight middle section, with 1 or 2 square portions sticking out near the end. Next came the pin tumbler locks from England, and America followed by the time release locks. These have a clock inside them that turns a wheel with a ridge in it, and when that ridge lines up with the keyhole, the box spring opens. As soon as I read this, I put the box up to my ear. No ticking. I knew that was too good to be true. 5. They now make bendable keys so that no one can pick the lock with a regular hard piece of metal like a hairpin. 6. I do not know what a hairpin is. The hour of Jeremy is almost up. I have time for one more quick search. I type in the words, the meaning of life, and hold my breath. 2 seconds later, I receive 2,560,000 hits. 2,560,000 hits! I click on what seems like the most obvious place to start. A definition of the word life. Life. Noun. 1. A state that is not death. That's it. The definition of life is not death. I shut my own computer, climb into bed, and throw the covers over my head. I wish I could say things look clearer in the fresh light of a new day, but so far, a new day means only that I have one less day to figure out how to open the box. Lizzie opens her apartment door with one hand while shoving a blueberry Vitamuffin down her throat through the other. Her dad makes her eat all the healthy food, and she actually eats it. My theory is that he doesn't want Lizzie to take after him in the girth department. A small man, he is not. I follow her into the kitchen where she hands me a daily chocolate Vitamuffin, the only flavor I will eat. I put the letter on the counter, and try to ignore the high vitamin and mineral content with concentrating on the chocolatey goodness of my muffin. Nothing like chocolate, even healthy, non-fat, good-for-you chocolate, to start the day off right. So what's your plan? I ask, reaching into the fridge for the container of milk. And will you get arrested? Or get us arrested? Have we ever gotten arrested? Lizzie replies, giving me a dirty look as I guzzle the milk straight from the carton. We've come close, I remind her. There was that time you convinced me to sneak into the pool at the senior center, and the guard chased us for 7 blocks. Or the time you made me be the lookout while you stole a menu from that outdoor restaurant and the waiter threw water on us. I'd say those were pretty close calls. For the record, Lizzie says, it was over 100 degrees when we snuck into that pool. It was totally worth it. Under her breath, she mumbles, and it was iced tea that he threw on us, not water. Lizzie leaves the kitchen to get her chart. Every plan has a chart. Some are even color-coded. I place the box on the table and sit down to wait. Lizzie must have been going through her playing card collection before I arrived, because they're spread out on the table. I have my mutant candy collection, and Lizzie has her playing cards. But while I'll happily accept a mutant piece of candy from anyone who finds it, she will only add a playing card to her collection if she finds it herself, in a public place. No duplicates either, and she won't look anywhere obvious, like the sidewalk outside the 33rd Street Bridge Club. She prefers to find her cards on subways or park benches or sticking out of sewer grates. She is only missing 3 now. The 2 of clubs, the 8 of hearts, and the Jack of diamonds. I remember how proud my dad was when Lizzie started her collection. He thought it was very creative. I mean, sure, putting together a full deck of cards by finding them one by one is certainly different, but it's not like you can eat it afterward like my collection. In fact, some of her cards are so dirty you can barely read the number and suit. As much as he encouraged us to have a collection, Dad had never landed one on himself. He collected baseball cards for a while, but only a few players played for 1 year. Then he was big at finding foreign stamps from countries that no longer existed. One stamp became his holy grail, and he would look at it everywhere he went. It was printed in Hawaii in 1851, over 100 years before Hawaii became a state. That stamp came in denominations of 2 cents, 5 cents, and 13 cents. Dad drew out pictures of it so Mom and I would recognize it if I were out of town. I still look for that stamp, but I'm beginning to think he made it up. Before he died, he had moved on to a fast food restaurant giveaway, which was great for me because he needed a kid in order to get the toys. Now I can't go into fast food places without feeling sad. Lizzie returns with a piece of construction paper rolled up in her arm. Zilla follows behind her and growls at me. Always one for the dramatics. Lizzie unfurls the paper with a snap of her wrist and lays it out in front of us, right on top of the playing cards. The first thing I notice are 2 pencil drawings on the box. She didn't get all the keyholes positioned exactly right, but it's a pretty good rendering. Sorry for the rough sketch, she said modestly. As you can see, I have numbered our options. The list goes from easiest to most difficult. Plan A. You can cross that one off, I instruct after reading it ahead of her. I already tried that. You stuck the box in the freezer? She asks, surprised. I nod. And the microwave. She gives me a big long look and then crosses off Plan A and B. You can cross off Plan C while you're at it. I already tried sticking a knife under the lid and it won't budge. With a loud sigh, she draws a line through the next entry. May I continue? She asks. By all means. Plan D. We take the box to Larry Locks and Clocks to see if he can do anything. I nod in agreement. That's a good one, she continues. And if that doesn't work, plan E is that I take the subway to 26th Street Flea Market this afternoon. We might get lucky there. Some of those vendors have got old keys for sale. I squirm a little after that one. I've never seen keys there. That's because you've never had a reason to look. Maybe, but still. It's all the way across town. You just don't want to take the subway without an adult, she says accusingly. As my mother says, we all grow at our own pace, crossing my arms in front of my chest defiantly. I say, you know, I don't take the subway alone. You wouldn't be alone. 2 red blotches appear on Lizzie's cheeks whenever she gets irritated. I can see them beginning to creep across her face. Come on, she says. We're almost 13. It's about time we got around the city on our own. Maybe you didn't have a good reason to do it before, but what better reason is there than to get this box open? She has a point. Resistance is clearly futile. Okay, I say flatly. If this locksmith can't help us and we have to go to the flea market, I'll go. Good, she says. As long as my mother says it's all right, I add. I have to stay on her good side after yesterday. Lizzie rolls her eyes. Fine, whatever. Let's get going. She turns the paper over so I can read the last item on the list and grabs the box. Wait, I say as she heads towards the front door. Aren't you going to tell me what Plan F is in case locksmith and the flea market don't work out? She pauses for a second and then shakes her head. Let's hope you never need to know. I don't like the sound of that. We stop at my apartment to grab my backpack. While I'm stuffing the box inside, Lizzie grabs a handful of Subway tokens from the dish on the kitchen counter. You might as well call your mom now, just in case Larry can't help us. I grumble, but I do it anyway. Mom says it's fine to take the subway as long as we're careful. Is it wrong of me that I had sort of been hoping she would say no? In all of my nearly 13 years of living, 2 blocks away, I have only been inside Larry Locks and Clocks once, when my dad found our grandfather clock. He was obsessed with making it work. He dragged it straight to the store from its previous home in some stranger's bulk garbage pail. When Dad was alive, Mom always threatened to break the clock against the chimes because they drove her crazy. But after he died, she stopped complaining about it. The sign of the window says the store is open only until noon on Saturdays, so we made it just in time. Lizzie pushes the door open and the little bell rings above our heads. No one else is in the shop. Shelves of clocks in various states of repair surround us. Other than my dad, I hadn't thought of anyone repaired clocks anymore instead of buying new ones. I look closer and see a thick coating of dust on most of them, like people dropped them off a decade ago and couldn't be bothered to come get them. My nose tickles, so I quickly move away from the shelf before I sneeze on everything. When I sneeze big. It runs in the family. Dad once sneezed so hard on the guy in front of us at the movies that the guy turned around and dumped his popcorn on Dad's lap. Lizzie and I approach the narrow counter that runs along the back of the store. Keys of all kinds hang from hooks behind it. A thin man in overalls wanders in the back room, wiping his hands on the napkin. What can I do for you today? He asks, flicking a crumpled McDonald's wrapper off the counter. It lands directly into the garbage can to the left of him. You Larry? Lizzie asks. The man shakes his head. Larry Jr. Lizzie looks at me and I shrug. I can't see that it matters which Larry helps us. She turns to me and unzips my backpack, pulling out the box. I could have done that, I whisper. She plops the box on the counter. Can you open this? What a pretty box, the man declares, turning it around in his hands. Aha! I feel vindicated. He thinks it's pretty too. The meaning of life is in this box, eh? The corners of his mouth twitch upward. I pretend not to hear him. If my dad says the meaning of life is in that box, then darn it, it's in there. I've lost the keys, I explain in a patient tone as I can muster. Do you have ones that might fit? He examines the box closely and furrows his brows. Let me see. No markings on the box indicating where it came from or who made it. That would have been helpful. These keys holes are very specific, made for this box alone. Maybe there's some other way to get in it. He slides the box under a lamp and switches on the light. The meaning of life is in this box, he mutters as he bends down to scrutinize it. Who would have thunk it? An older man in identical overalls comes out from the back room. What's this I hear about the meaning of life in a box, he asks. Larry Jr. points to us. These kids brought this box. Don't have the keys. No keys, eh? He asks, looking at us closely. I'll take over, he says, stepping behind the counter. That's okay, Pop, Larry Jr. says. I got it. The old man, who I assume is Larry himself, shakes his head. We just got a call that Mr. Chang locked himself out again. I need you to go help her. Larry Jr. shrugs and grabs a toolbox from the shelf. Good luck, he says, and heads out. The bells tinkle behind him. We turn back to Larry Sr. He is resting his hands on the box, eyes closed. Lizzie and I raise our eyebrows and exchange looks. I say tentatively. So do you think you can open it for us? Larry's eyes snap open. Nope. My shoulders sag a bit. He continues. This is no ordinary box. It has an elaborate locking mechanism inside with levers and pulleys. And we know, Lizzie interrupts and then recites Harold's letter. And each keyhole needs a different type of key, and an internal latch will prevent the box from being pried open. Not just that, Larry says, but under the wood is a layer of metal. That means no one's getting through this without destroying the contents. A saw or an axe would crush the whole thing. You can see the edge of the metal layer if you look closely in the gap. We lean into the counter and peer under the light. He's right. I hadn't noticed the thin silver layer of metal visible along the opening. Why couldn't my dad have bought a normal box like anyone else would have? With one keyhole. He switches off the lamp and pushes the box across us. Sorry to disappoint you, but the only way anyone's getting into this box is with keys. Lizzie points to the rows of keys behind the man. What about those? Will any of those fit? Larry doesn't even turn around. Nope. Those are blank keys that we use to make copies of existing ones. But I do have a box of spares that I've collected over the years. You're welcome to them. He bends down and fishes under the counter for a minute. Lizzie and I stand on our toes, eagerly peering over. He finally stands up and hands me a cigar box, but doesn't even feel full. I try not to show my disappointment. I had pictured a huge box with hundreds of keys. Thanks, Lizzie says gamely. And none of these fit. What do you think our chances are of finding the keys that will? I mean, somewhere else in the city, I'd say slim to nil. But Slim ain't left town yet, if you know what I mean. We stare at him blankly. He chuckles. That means it's doubtful, but anything's possible. After all, you've got a mighty good cause trying to find out the meaning of life and all. Thanks, I say with one more enthusiasm than I feel. We'll bring these right back. No rush, he says, waving his hand in the air. How long you got till your 13th birthday anyway? I'm assuming you're the Jeremy Fink on the box. A little under a month, I reply as we head toward the door. It's hard to keep the disappointment out of my voice. A lot can happen in a month, he calls after us. Keep the faith. You bet, Lizzie says. Amen. When we make it outside, I tell her, I don't think you're supposed to say amen when someone says keep the faith. She shrugs. How am I supposed to know? All I know about a religion is that dog spelled backwards is God, and I learned that on Saturday morning cartoon. Let's go sit in the park and try the keys. We head around the corner to the park where we've played since we were little. It's a different feel to it now that we're on a mission. I wonder if the men reading the newspaper on the benches or the women watching their kids in the sandbox can sense that we're all up to something important. We settle under a tree near the playground where the grass has been worn smooth. I dump the keys onto the ground in a pile. It's not a very big pile, 30 keys at most. We agree to try each key in each keyhole, and then if it doesn't fit, return it to the cigar box. That way we won't try the same keys twice by mistake. Lizzie takes the first one, and before she puts it in a hole, covers it with both hands and whispers something to it. What are you doing? I ask. I'm saying a little prayer for good luck, she answers. I might not know anything about religion, but that doesn't mean we can't pray. You know, to the powers of the universe or something. Come on, do it with me. What am I supposed to say? She thinks for a minute and says, how about, O Master of all things locked, please allow the key to be opened. Please allow this key to open Jeremy Fink's box. After a short pause, she adds, Amen. I glance around to make sure no one is sitting nearby. Why don't you just say it? We don't want to confuse the Master of all things locked with two different voices. Suit yourself, she says, and prays to the key louder than I would have liked. She then tries it in all 4 holes, to no avail. We go through each key that way. None fit. Most of them won't even enter the keys at all. About a handful of them actually slide into a notch, but don't go any farther. By the time we're done, and down to the last key, Lizzie's prayer had become a mumble of mastery box amen. This time I add my own little silent amen, but it does no good. Larry's box is now full again, and I have to go on the stubborn way. Ugh!